Okay, well it is 7 o'clock, so can I welcome you all to the September meeting of the Finance, Employment and Services Committee. There are apologies from, lots of apologies from Brian and from Jonathan. No other apologies because everyone else is here. Item 3, could I ask someone to move the minutes or otherwise from the last meeting? Are there any comments on those minutes? That's a first. Moving on, item 4, declarations of interest. Has anyone got any interest to declare? No? Item 5, public forum. There's no one here from the public, and as far as I'm aware, no one has asked to contact us via Zoom. No? Item 6, exclusion of the public, which only applies on this agenda to the last item, which is item 15, which is a staffing review. Public items, item 7, financial update. Have you anything you wish to say on this one, Gina?
No, other than obviously we may see some things with the town hall repairs and maintenance. We may see something in more repairs and maintenance for the town hall. Other than that, everything is, there's nothing particular that's come up that's going to make a huge difference. So.
Right. Is there anyone else? David?
Just got a couple of questions. I mean, just looking through again, we're sort of 5/12 of the way through the year. So looking at the sort of spending patterns, there's a couple of things which are more sort of summertime things, like allotments and cone and bloom and things, which the spending level's quite low, even if you add in the commitments. Are we going to be underspending by the end of the year, or do we have some early commitments in sort of January, February, March time for next summer?
In regards to the allotments, we are looking at purchasing some land to allow access, so that's not in there yet. We had to wait for the formal transfer documents to come through before we can look at the actual final purchasing, so that's why that one is a little bit high. Cone in bloom, I believe we're still working on cross-charging some of the expenses, the watering costs, once we've actually completed the season, and we're still working on getting second landsman a few bits of kit and things, so that we've purchased some more in the last week, which won't yet be registering on there. I think that's it.
Because if you look at the grand total down the bottom, then obviously you see that if you add in the commitments again, you're into around about the overall total, and obviously we may be underspending on some of them at the moment, but we're also spending a lot of money on the town hall, of course. So we'll come on to that later, I'm sure. But no other questions. I was pleased about the debt recovery notice from the delayed tenant, let's call them. So that was a good step forward. But yeah, no other questions.
Yeah. Anyone else? So can someone move that we accept 7A, B and C?
Yep, I'll move it.
Is it seconded? All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Item 8, external audit.
Yes, so you'll be pleased to know that the reviewing of the accounts has been concluded for 2020-21 with nothing to report. So everything is gone through. Everything's published now on our website and in the notice boards as should be. So, and we don't have to pay any extra for the invoice, which is good. So that's all good.
Oh, I would expect nothing less, Chairman.
Just a quick question from me. Obviously, I noticed they've reported there's no issues, no control matters or anything like that. So the numbers were absolutely super duper robust. There were no score sheet items to discuss or anything like that.
There were some items that were discussed, mainly because we had restated the figures from last year, but that was with the new guidance that came along about treating salaries and wages. So we'd done that, and they just wanted us to confirm that that's why we'd done it and give them a breakdown. So we did that. Also, they did question a couple of things, but once I explained what they were fine with them. They said, no, you don't need any changes. So they just needed that clarification. But because we got back to them straight away, they obviously had no issues with anything. So.
And did they raise any sort of control recommendations about how we do things or anything we... No? Excellent. Okay. So a good, robust internal control framework. Exactly what you need. Okay.
Okay. So we can accept that report. Item 9, recruitment update. Well, all I can tell you is that we did the interviews. We picked a candidate, a successful candidate, and they started work yesterday. So if you want to know anything else, you'll either have to ask Naomi or Gina.
His name, he's called Stephen Jones. He's on, again, part-time, but there is always movement for that. He's very enthusiastic. He's got background knowledge of listed buildings as well. And we're only day 2, but so far we're happy. So, but it's nice that we've got them in and someone who's enthusiastic to be part of the team and help improve Cone. No. He just has this job. He has expressed that if we increase the hours, he wouldn't be adverse to it, but he's not looking for anything else because he understands as well this is the flexibility in this job is very important. I think he has a few hobbies, possibly building tractors or something, but he's so far so good, I think. I'm sure you'll see him around somewhere.
Anyone else? No? So moving on then to item 10, transfer of services. I think it's really to receive an update from the meeting that Pendle held along with the town and parishes. As I did say at the last full council meeting, I would make my feelings known to Philip and say that I wasn't in favour of starting any discussions until they had sort of completed the outstanding work on prior transfers, which was mainly the transfer of the allotments, which took place 12 years ago, and they still haven't finished it, and we still haven't got the freehold. Having said that, since then, it may have made someone make a move, because I am told that on at least one site, some paperwork has started to appear. Yeah.
With regards to that one, yes, I'm expecting through the post the transfer documents that we had already approved and sent back a month ago or so. And it's for the allotment site where we want to purchase the access land. I have then replied saying, brilliant, what about the rest of them? That was yesterday, so I'm just waiting to hear, because obviously we want to get that. We'd like them transferred as soon as possible anyway, regardless of any of the services. So we are, again, nudging, but I can say, I think it's actually classed as 2 allotment sites. I believe it's South Valley and Knotts Lane, which are kind of adjoined. So, but I should have the documents this week to sign and return.
And that partly fits in with part of the underspend that you said there was on the allotments, because that particular allotment site, we have a problem with access and we can't access all the allotments properly. The answer is to buy a piece of land next to it so that we control the access road. But we don't want to buy the piece of land, obviously, until we've got the freehold for the allotments anyway. So it's all linked in together. Once the freehold is ours, we will purchase the land, and the landowner is quite amicable to selling it. Anyone else? Have you must have something to say, David, because you chaired the meeting.
Yes, I've got the two hats on, haven't I?
Well, yeah.
So yes, I fed back the comments from the council about the freehold and the allotments, etc. So I've done it both verbally and by email. So I'm pleased to hear it's yielded some action. I also said if they didn't get a move on, it would be a barrier to any form of negotiation we might want to have on any future asset transfers, just because, there's no point going through all the hard work of agreeing things if the legal department then hold us up for no reason. Let's get some priority on some of these things. So after the meeting, then what happened is the interim CFO of Pendle left. So Kelvin Turner has left. He's been replaced by a bloke called Graham, who actually lives in South London, rather bizarrely. It's an interim. There you go. So he's got 2 or 3 months or so to keep things ticking over. I've passed on to him all the various lists that we need, because we all know what we want, and that is what are the operating costs of any of the assets that are in question, and also what potential capex is there required on them. So he and the team, they've just finished their audit as well, or was finishing their audit. So that gives them a bit of time and a bit of bandwidth to be able to start to put together that information that we want to be able to make the decisions about the various things listed for code. The other news as well on the municipal hall is that I believe there's going to be a capex request put in by the Leisure Trust anyway, as part of that and other assets. That's on the next P&R committee. And also, of course, the municipal hall features quite heavily in the levelling up bid that's gone in for the town centre and the heritage quarter, etc., of the town. Decision on that could be through in October-ish, with the following wind. So there's a few things fit in with some of the things we want to try and consider there. I suppose what we're after really is having a think about the things that we particularly are interested in, either knowing more about, knowing what the running costs are, and almost think about prioritising some of the things with the code name alongside them. So are there some that are non-starters? Don't know. Are there some we should try to do, if possible? I would suggest things like car parks is possibly one. Cemeteries is another one. Market and municipal hall, I think there are possibly some grand plans for the market in the offing as well, so that might fit in quite nicely. Sports pitches, I don't know which ones they are exactly. And the wonderfully vague term, which I've asked for clarification on, which was the miscellaneous pieces of land. So again, I have no idea whether they actually have a list of that at Pendle or whether they don't. So
they do have a list of miscellaneous pieces of land. It was presented to us at the time that your group had control of the town council.
Okay.
It was delegated to Joe Coonet and myself to go and scrutinise them all and then come back with our own report. And we thought some of them could be quite handy, particularly the one at the roundabout at White Walls and the one at the end of Byron Road, top of Effa Lane, because they were places where you might be able to earn a little bit towards the upkeep of the area by advert boards, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We were told that the agreement would ban us using any sort of advertising on them. So myself and Joe jointly sort of said on your back.
Said forget it. Okay,
And that's as far as that went. And as far as I know, it will be the same pieces of land, because once you've got your pieces of land in common, they're still there. They don't accumulate more, so they'll be the same ones.
right, okay.
So I would think that is a dead duck. What I can tell you, and it'll be something new to a few of you, because you weren't around at the time when this took place, but when we initially started looking into taking on this building, we were it was mooted that they would want to do the Muni as well. And a condition survey was done on this building. And a condition survey was also done on the Muni. The condition surveys, both of them, when you put them together, showed that the Muni was in far worse condition than this building. And we've had all sorts of problems with this building, and it still needs a new roof on. So when it comes to Muni, I think we need to be very, very careful.
Yes, yes. I know there was a tour of some of the leisure facilities by various councillors, not me, but they did look at the Muni, and they did identify some of the problems there, as you say. So whilst some of it's good, you know, it's well structured and well set up, etc. You know, their choice of programme is, you know, variable. But I think they had some problems. All those wonderful flowers that are all over them. Apparently the flowers, if you water them every single day or whatever, then lo and behold, water creeps into various parts of the building and causes rot. So they've got some issues there as well, which don't really help. So there's a few things there, and as you say, I think if referring back to the old, I remember Colin Hill mentioning it in his day, about the extent of the maintenance and repairs required on the building. So yeah.
Yeah, you can do.
So I worked with Colin on it and on the conditional surveys, and we were in the millions figures for works. And this isn't stuff that you can maybe do. This is over 2 million of you got to do like now sort of stuff, if that makes sense. There was, I mean, like we said, this building has a few hiccups. However, there was a lot more down there. But I did work alongside Colin on it, so I've got some basics on it, if that helps.
So I guess, does anybody have any thoughts about priorities then, and lists, and
regarding
keeping the Muni at the bottom,
the
for
car
example?
parks, and you heard what I said at the meeting.
Yes.
I did say what made the car parks difficult. I mean, sweeping them, keeping them clean, and the upkeep of the tarmac on them, filling a few potholes in now and then, it probably isn't a major expense. And now there is putting new white lines on them once every year or every 2 years or whatever. But I did suggest that we could end up in a situation, because they do fall in a category where business rates can be charged on an open car park, even though it's not a building. And that amounted to quite a bit of money. I'm hoping Philip will go away and find some way of removing that cost. But there's an equal cost with the market, because the market is a shambles of a building. It should never have been built like it was, but we stuck with it. But now all the flats, apart from the 2 privately owned ones upstairs above the market, are empty, because Together Housing moved out because the building wasn't fit for purpose. We're also in a similar situation with that. If we took on the market and took the freehold of the market, we would have 9 empty properties in there, and empty properties, dwellings, are eligible to pay the full council tax amount if they're empty. So that could be a cost on top of the loss of the market. So I'm not saying we can't have any discussions, and I'm only talking for myself here. I'm not saying we shouldn't have any discussions, but if we do have any discussions on the market and various other things, there is a lot of nitty-gritty things that we need some truthful and proper answers to.
Yeah. I know that the Cone Bid is very interested in the market and the outdoor market as well. They obviously ran one the other weekend, and I think they're interested in how the inside of the market works and what does Liberata do with it, for example. How do they run it? It seems like the only KPIs that Liberata have are all about, number of empty stalls and amount of rent arrears, and that's about it basically. So there's no sort of push or incentive to try and run it as a proper, more vibrant market. So as I say, I think the Cone Bid is quite interested in what they can do with it and how they can run it as well. So yeah, but I've got some notes on the flats and things like that, so I'll feed all those in. And the rateable value point, as you say.
Yeah. Well, if the council tax was to be paid on the empty 9 properties, you're looking at 10 grand there every year. That's on top of the losses that the market makes.
Yeah.
So Howard.
Thank you. I'm not sure of the bid taking over them. I'm not sure that that's in their purview, because the members of the bid, by definition, are traders. So lots of cross interests and what have you. So I think that would be it ought to be a non-starter, because it would be, incestuous is the wrong word, but that relationship. Well, yeah, but I think that is a difficulty. The reason the market has the flats above it is that was how the old Coombe Council paid for it. They paid for it out of whatever housing allocation money was called back in those days. That was the way they made it stack up, by putting literally council houses on top of the market, or council flats on top of the market. And those flats have been a problem more or less since it was built, because the roof is an industrial roof, and so it made noises when it was windy, it rattled and it was drafty, and some of us actually campaigned to get not an answer phone, an entry phone put on the thing, because that didn't exist until when they were first built. So there was a problem with youths getting in and running around and knocking on doors and being a problem, but that's in the past now, because there's only the 2 that were purchased. The problem we have at the moment is we're not doing this on a level playing field, because there are some town councils and parish councils that have not taken on things that we have. So just as a for instance, Colne council taxpayers pay us to look after Alkincoats Park. They also, within their bit that goes to Pendle, are paying for Victoria Park, Wolverden Park, I'm guessing Hayhead Park in Briarfield, don't know about Barrowford Park, but until it's all on an equitable footing, we've got to be very careful that we're not loading Colne council taxpayers with costs for other areas. And I think when it comes to talking of taking things on like the Muni or the the leisure centre, we'd be in exactly the same difficulties there, because if for instance we took on the leisure centre, and I'm guessing Barley could take on West Craven Pool, we'd then be in the situation of how do you go on about wavelengths, number 1 markets, the Ace Centre, and any other miscellaneous, Seed Hill. The whole thing becomes very murky. I'd be against taking on the cemeteries because that is a statutory duty at the moment for Pendle Borough Council, and I think we should go near taking on any statutory duties. We shouldn't touch them with the proverbial, never mind a 9 foot, a 900 foot barge pole. We just shouldn't go near them and lumber ourselves with such liabilities. The car parks are a possibility if the question of paying the business rates can be overcome, and so that it's either a nominal tuppence halfpenny or zero. But that's a lot of ifs and buts, and then there'd still be the costs of presumably paying whatever the Lancashire bit of the man that goes round and sticks tickets on when you haven't put your little clock on come to. Well, yeah, so, well, I mean, yeah, that is another, you know, if we have our car parks and somebody else doesn't have theirs, would a little clock that works in Colne work somewhere else? I mean, I guess it would, because that was the deal when Pendle came up with the idea of the clock thing, that Pendle would accept ones from other places that had a similar. I can't think of any off the top of my head. So I think we just got to be very, very careful that we stay away from literally double paying in some instances for services. And until it's all on a nice level footing, we've got to be very, very careful, because all we will do is land the council taxpayers of Colne with higher council tax and probably not be able to carry out things properly, because Pendle are still having to run things in other parts of the borough. I just think we've got to be careful if we do, and it's far too early, I think, to start saying, oh, we'll take the market on. You know, markets are very difficult at the moment, and it's not just, well, Nelson Market has bit the dust. There are still quite a few empty stalls in Colne Market, although a few less than there were a few months ago. But again, we've got to be careful. It's not law of diminishing returns, and it's all right that there may be jam tomorrow in the form of some levelling up money, but I think we have to wait until we've seen almost literally the money on the table, or the cheque and just need the signature. We've got to be careful that we don't buy a pig in a poke, or we don't buy it, we get given a pig in a poke, because we could easily end up doing that and land future denizens of this fine town with lots of problems that they've then got to solve. But by all means keep the talks going, but let's not go in there all gung-ho and we want to take this on and we want to do that and the other. We've got to be very careful that we're not, as I said, pig in a poke is the best expression I can give, because after we took this on, I nearly said things crawled out of the wood. They probably literally did crawl out of some bits of woodwork. We've just got to be careful that we know every I is dotted, every T is crossed, you can't cover every eventuality, I know, but as many that we can foresee are got out before we sign on the dotted line. Mind you, on current speed, none of us will be here by the time Pendle, sign on, get ready to pass the papers across to sign. We'll all be keeping the cemeteries going. Oh, something's turning off.
Anyone else? I just have one further thing to say about the market. I mean, I know Dean's now gone, he's left Pendle, he's moved on. But that is, the market in Cornwall was one thing that for years myself and Dean both agreed on. And and we both thought that the long-term plan for the market needed to be to redevelop the whole area, the market, the car park and the bus station, and get something better there. Now, if some money did come along, some levelling up money, and there were plenty of it, that would be an ideal scheme, project, whatever you want to call it. But I think that is the long-term answer to that building, which is not fit for purpose, is to redevelop the whole shopping area theme in that area, including the bus station. I mean, how often does a bus go in there now?
Yeah, not often.
Not often. They stop at front of the play station.
Can't get in, it's full of firemen's cars.
Well, but the whole thing needs redeveloping and having some thought put into it. So if there's no more comments on transfer of services, can we move on then to item 11, Townhall Maintenance, which is probably more bad news.
This was asked to be a standing item just for if anything else fell off. Is that the answer? Just to let you know, the room that we've had the rather large leak in most recently has now been stripped back. The scaffolding should be starting to go up this Friday to sort out the pointing for the external, because you can actually see through where there should be pointing, which isn't a great thing. And as soon as that should be completed by the end of next week, is what they've told me. It is obviously still slightly weather dependent. If you start getting gale force winds, it's a little bit more tricky. And then all the dehumidifiers are coming in a week this Friday to get it dried out. They think it should be finished by November. I'm reckoning December because I know what the weather around here is like. But it is underway and carrying on. We have got a couple more leaks, which is always a fun thing for me to say. We're always going to have it, but we are having quite in-depth meetings with various contractors to find out what the options would be for a re-roof for this. But the honest answer, it's going to be a huge project and it's going to be expensive. It could be something that the council need to consider capital borrowing for again, because you could do it over 50 years for this building because it's not actually going anywhere. But that obviously entails various consultations and the likes. But I think getting this building watertight is getting more and more of a serious problem. Gina and I were having the conversation today. You could just keep doing like we're doing, which is doing reactive work, but that's also not feasible. We have approached a company to look at the conditional survey we had done 4 or 5 years ago and actually go through what we have done, what still needs doing, and look at the condition of the roof. I am going to go find more quotes, but you're currently looking at just the piece of work to find out what we need to do now, sort of thing, at about 20 grand. And that's before any physical work is done. So it's worth us just being aware this building is not cheap, but we are trying where possible to keep it. The advantage of us now having 2 Lentsmen is general DIY handyman bits are being done in-house, which but it isn't a re-roof thing that they can do. It's more painting, decorating sort of side of it. But if anyone does have any questions, feel free to ask.
I've got some comments. I think long term it's better to bite the bullet probably and get the job done, because I don't see the point in paying 30-40 grand this year to get some repairs done on roof, and then in another 18 months, 2 years with another 30-40 grand to do a little bit more. And then you have the problems of jointing the old refurbished bit to the other bit, and when you start jointing things, it's another problem.
That's part of the issue. With where tender have done partly.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, if we're not careful, we could end up spending 150 grand on it, and then still find that we're getting nowhere and still have to do a complete re-roof. Also, the way interest rates have been for the last few years at rock bottom, where you can get a not exactly interest free, but loans from loan board are virtually non-existent for the interest. So if we were to be minded to bite the bullet and take a loan out to get it done, we might as well bite the bullet and get it done while interest rates are very near to zero, rather than wait another 10 years and they're back at 4 or 5% and pay a fortune in interest for it, particularly if we're going to spread it over several years. So I think if we are minded to take the loan out and do it, it wants doing before interest rates go back up. And I've nothing much more to say on it. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. As you say, as we've said, you can keep patching, but joins are not good. Stopgaps, the scaffolding and all the up and down, etc. You may as well do the whole thing all at once at some point, and at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
I was going to say my advice would be obviously to get the conditional survey looked at and the condition of the building, so that we can plan for the future. It's not just reactive, there is some preventative maintenance in there as well. So,
Do we need to approve that spend then, or is it just, that's fine?
In regards to that, it's only provisional. I would like to get at least one more quote to compare it to. From what I can grasp of the actual works, just to give you an idea of figures, you're probably around the £1.5 million mark for it. It would also mean scaffolding the whole building and top hat scaffolding covers on it. But what I would recommend is if we're doing that, then anything else high up gets done. So the clock face probably in about another 5 years needs repainting. Yeah, might do it a bit. So that sort of reaction is if we are going to have to do such a big project, we literally look this floor upwards, what has to be done, because the other bit to take into consideration, every time we do one of these little projects on even this room, when we have contractors on site, I mean, Gina will say, how much time do I lose? Probably 4 or 5 hours a week with various different contractors doing the health and safety talks, signing them in, reminding certain people we're a listed building. It's a lot of time for little projects, whereas I know doing a big project like that would detract from either myself or Gina's time as well, but it would be more a one-off. It's probably going to take 6 to 8 months to do. That's why we're trying to get it sorted now, so we'll know for the new financial year what we need to do, because we're starting to think budgets. It is a big project. It will make the building have to be closed to the public, but we did it through COVID and we did it through appointments, and there's ways to do it. So all those things we are also considering, so we can do it. But £1.5 million, just to give you an idea, if that helps at all.
Is there any consolation about the town hall in general? I've had some very positive comments from people about the loveliness of our downpipes and drain pipes. be absolutely spectacular, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else? So we're getting another quote for the survey.
I've got another company that that's the other company. I've got a phone call to make back to them. Got a message on my desk, so I've got that one. And the other company I have approached is one that's come through recommendations from a couple of different contractors who've worked on not only this building, but other listed buildings. So I've gone out for ones that have come recommended from various sources because, to be honest, your officers are pretty sensitive about who works on this building, with it being grade 2 listed. If anyone's working on it, we would like it done properly, as we felt the council would.
Well, we can't approve the spend tonight because I can't ask you roughly what it's going to be because you would base it on the tender you've already got, which we can't really do when we're live and we haven't got the second pricing yet. So it'll have to, once you've got the tenders, it'll have to come back to a future FES meeting.
Hoping to have it for next month.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay then, so we'll move on. Items for a future month's agenda. Well, we've just got one.
But it can come under Townhall Maintenance that you asked for.
Well, it can. Yeah, it can come under that.
Or a separate one.
Has anyone else got any items for a future agenda?
Nope.
Nope. The date and the time.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to say, starting next month, we're going to start on the budget review for next year.
Yeah.
Now, given the talk, I'm taking new services, obviously possible re-roof of the building. I'm just looking at direction from you as to what kind of budgets you want me to produce. i.e., do you want me to try and include? That's, yeah. So it's.
I suppose common sense would say you just do a base budget and you ignore
Everything else.
the roof and any transfer of assets and services. And then you can either add those on afterwards and then we shimmy around as necessary as the picture emerges.
This is probably one that I try and include in the budget
Yeah.
because it needs to, it really needs to.
Yeah.
Well,
I think initial for the roofing, I think any transfers, anything on that, it's going to be towards the end of the next financial year anyway, I would have thought. So that's not a huge, it's not a huge hurry in doing that. But I think the roof obviously is because, yeah, another winter and another bit falls off and, yeah. So some indicative figures, I think.
what I would like Gina to get for us is, initially, have we any indication as to how many years we will want to take the loan out over? That is one thing. Well, if it was 50, or if it was 40, or if it was 30 years, it would be useful to have the current figures from the loan board as to what the repayments would be on, say, £1 million and £1.5 million over 30, 40 and 50 years.
Yeah.
And then if we do end up in a situation where we bite the bullet, we know how much the repayments are, because the figure that matters to us for our budget is the capital repayments, and that needs to go in our budget. So that would be a useful figure for us to have. I know things might move on in 12 months when loan comes through and things might have changed slightly, but it'd give us a guide as to what sort of money we were going to have to include in the precept and in our budget to pay the loan off. Because the only way you can have a loan from the loan board, obviously, is to be able to show that you can pay it off. So we need the figures.
Yeah.
Well, our staff costs have gone up 1.5%. National insurance this afternoon. So.
Yeah. So can you endeavour to get us?
Well, no, actually, that's not strictly not true because it's the employee national insurance. It's what we pay, not what the council pays. The employer's national insurance hasn't changed. Is it both? Okay, so
1.25% on both,
Ah.
which is 2.5% overall.
It's both.
I've not even seen the news today, too busy.
It's all right, we didn't promise not to do it in our election stuff.
Right, well, the date and time of the next regular meeting is Tuesday the 5th of October. And now we've got to exclude public and press, so can we switch off, please?